All right. Well, my name is John Trapp, and I'm youth pastor at Christ the King in Houston. I'm really excited about talking to you guys. I have no idea why they asked me to talk about this topic. Joey asked me to talk about manhood, and I think it's really ironic because sometimes I don't feel like I'm the greatest man. Sometimes I feel like I'm a pretty big sissy. But what we're going to talk about today is what is the idea, what is like true manhood actually? And there's a lot of people have a lot of different opinions on this. You know, the world has a lot of opinions on this is what a man looks like. If you've ever seen a Dr. Pepper 10 commercial, Dr. Pepper 10, it's not for women. You know what I'm talking about? That's kind of communicating this is what manhood is. If you've ever seen an Axe commercial, not like a swinging Axe, you know what I'm talking about, the deodorized shampoo that smells really, really strong. That would have some things to tell you about what manhood is. There's also a lot of Christians who have some things to say about what manhood is. There's kind of this movement in the Christian world kind of centered around finding your biblical masculinity or what is true biblical manhood. I think it's kind of interesting because Jesus never really talks about that in the Bible. He never talks about, Jesus never talks about this is what it's like to be a man in the Bible. There's none of that. What I would suggest to y'all today, and this is kind of what we're going to spring off of for the next 2 days. It's a quote that I read from a book named, it's called The Silence of Adam, and it's by a guy named Larry Crabb. And he says, in order to be manly, you must first be godly. In order to be truly manly, you must first be godly. And so that's really what we're going to talk about the next 2 days is what does it look like to be a man in the context of knowing who God is and following Jesus. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the story that Jesus tells about two young men who are kind of on their way to becoming men. It's the story of the prodigal. A lot of y'all probably know it as the prodigal son. I want to kind of rename it for the next 2 days and call it the lost sons, plural. We're going to talk about the two sons. Today we're going to talk about the younger brother and the things that he hears from the world about what the world is telling him, that this is what's going to make you a man, this is what's going to kind of justify you and your existence. And so I want you to think about this before we really dive into this study. Have you ever thought that something would satisfy you only to find out that it doesn't satisfy you at all? You may have, maybe like your life, I still can't go to sleep on Christmas Eve. You guys know what I'm talking about? You lie in bed, you're like, your eyes are just glued open. And then you play with that toy, and then like, you know, you get up the next morning, you play with the toy, you play with it all day, and then like 2 months later, it's like, I've already beat the game like 6 times, I've gotten all the achievements, I've mastered the game, and I'm so sick of it now. You know, you thought it would satisfy you, it doesn't. I'll tell you a story. This is a story about my brother. I am the youngest in my family, so Kurt Keeper, yes, that's true. Everyone does love me the best in my family. But I was the youngest in my family, and I was younger by a pretty big, long shot. My brother is like 7.5 years older. My sister's 5.5 years older. We went to Colorado on a family vacation, and my dad's name is actually Rusty Trapp. Think about that for a second. It's kind of funny. My dad's name is Rusty Trapp, and if you're ever on a family trip with Rusty Trapp, and it's time to eat, and there's a Cracker Barrel that you're driving past, the car is going to veer violently to the side of the road so that you can stop at Cracker Barrel. So we pull over at Cracker Barrel. We're on a family trip in Colorado. We've got the family rental van. And have y'all been to Cracker Barrel? Okay. You know, the food at Cracker Barrel is okay. The reason, if you're a kid, that you want to go to Cracker Barrel is because of the gift shop. The toys. Yes, exactly. The gift shop. So we all get up here, we scarf it down, we just eat as fast as we can. And then we went off to the gift shop. And my brother is like 14, 15. He's kind of like cool. My sister and I run to the gift shop. He's kind of like, you know, struts to the gift shop. And he starts looking at all the stuff that he might want to get. And he finds this jawbreaker. And it's like the Cracker Barrel jawbreaker. Y'all seen these things? They're white and speckled. You know what I'm talking about? With like little speckles on them. And they're like the size, they're like larger than a baseball. They're huge. And my brother gets the jawbreaker and he takes it to my dad. He's like, Dad, will you please give me this jawbreaker? Like, I won't bother you for anything else. Like, I just want this jawbreaker. It's gonna be like, it'll keep me satisfied for like a couple weeks, and I won't bother you for any more candy. My dad's like, all right, fine, I'll get you the jawbreaker. Don't try to stick that thing in your mouth. He's like, I'm not gonna try to stick this thing in my mouth. He's like, all right, you can have the jawbreaker. I'll never forget what happened next. We get in the van. My sister and I are sitting in the middle. I remember this so clearly. We're playing Battleship. My brother is like sitting in the back, you know, the back of the van, kind of sprawled out, like 15-year-old, being cool. And we're not paying attention to him at all. You know, I'm like, B7, miss. C2, miss. B8, hit. And then we start hearing this from the back of the van. I'm like, B9. We turn around. My brother has taken this jawbreaker that is larger than a baseball and somehow has fit it into his mouth. His teeth have closed around the jawbreaker. He now cannot open his jaw again wide enough to get the jawbreaker out of his mouth. And he's in the back and he's like salivating a lot because it's stuck in there, and this like pasty white drool is like going down the sides of his mouth, and he's doing this. My dad's like, well, I told you not to try to put that thing in your mouth. He's like, we pull over to the gas station, and my brother has to walk into a gas station like this. And they go to the bathroom and like run water over it until it dissolves enough, and then he's like, gets it out. All right, why did I tell you that story? That night on the hotel bed, he was like this all night. My brother had this jawbreaker that looked so delicious. It's, you know, it's like hardened packed sugar. Who wouldn't want that? How does that not sound awesomely satisfying and wonderful? And he takes it and he tries to pop it in his mouth and eat it. And he ends up becoming completely unsatisfied. Now, why did I tell you that silly story? I tell you that silly story because of the question I asked you before I told you that story. Have you ever thought that something would satisfy you only to find out that it didn't? And what I would suggest to you today, guys, is that the world is going to give you guys who are becoming men, it's going to hold out to you these things that I'm going to call jawbreakers, okay? It's going to hold these things out, it's going to hold this out to you and tell you, you know what, if you take this, you're going to be satisfied. If you can get a really good job, you're going to be satisfied. If you can get to a really good college, you're going to be satisfied. If you can marry a really hot girl, you're going to be satisfied. If you can be really funny in your class, you're going to be satisfied. If you can beat this game and become this like level player online, you're going to be satisfied. There's all these different, if you can become a great athlete, you're going to be satisfied. The world's going to hold out these things to you. And I'm telling you, you are made for so much more than those things. And because of that, because you are made for something so much better than a life devoted to pursuing a hot girl, or you're made for so much better than just a life trying to make a lot of money. You're made for something so much better than that, that those things aren't going to satisfy you. They're going to leave you really, really disappointed and empty. And that's where we find the younger brother in this story about the prodigal son. So I'm going to read this and then we'll pray and ask the Lord to bless his reading and the teaching of his word. So here, this is from Luke 15, a little background information. You've got Jesus. He's been hanging out with all these sinners and tax collectors and people that, you know, the religious people are like, why is he hanging out with them? That's surprising. And so you've got the tax collectors that are there hearing Jesus teach, and the Pharisees are there hearing Jesus teach, the religious people kind of like us, people who would be going to church a lot. And Jesus tells a story. Luke 15:11. I'm just going to read the first couple verses for now. And he said, there was a man who had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of property that is coming to me. And he divided his property between them. This is the word of the Lord. Let's pray. Lord, would you please have mercy on me, a sinner? Would you please have mercy on us would you please be here with us now? Lord, I'm afraid. I'm afraid that I'm not going to get the things that I think will make me satisfied. Even just studying for this is reminding me of how often I put my hope in things that aren't ultimately going to satisfy. Even things like trying to sound good teaching these guys. Lord, help me not to rely on that. Help me not to rely on wanting to be funny or liked. Help us not to rely on the things that the world is holding out to us that are jawbreakers. Lord, please, in this story, would you show us our need for you? Would you show us what it looks like to be a man? And so we pray and ask all these things in your name. Amen. Okay, what just happened in this story? You've got a son, and he comes up to his dad, and he says, I want the money that's coming to me. I want the inheritance. Now, this is the first thing that the world is going to tell you what makes you a man. Okay, you ready for this? The world is going to tell you that independence makes you a man. The world is going to tell you that being independent and being able to take care of yourself is going to make you a man. There is a commercial, an Axe commercial, and we could just talk about Axe commercials for the entire lesson, and it would be good to talk about. But I'm just going to talk about one. There's a commercial, and in the commercial, you see a mildly attractive guy with a weird mustache and an extremely attractive girl, and they start making out, and they fall into bed. And the next morning, they wake up, and the axe guy is like, we've already shown you the first axe effect, which is like women get psychotic and want to basically women become sluts. That's what happens. That's the first axe effect that Axe is trying to tell you. But he says there's a second axe effect, and the girl is just holding on to this guy, and she won't let him go. And the guy's like trying to get off, and he's trying to get her off, and he is going to play tennis, and she's like still holding on to him. It's like ridiculous. And then he's like trying to play video games with his friends and like trying to high five his friend, and the girl's like still hanging on to him. And it's like, what do you do like with this second axe effect, this much more unfortunate axe effect? What do you do? And like the guy literally has a saw in his hand, and they're back in the bed, and he's about to cut off the woman he was making love to. He's about to cut off her arm the next day so that he can finally be independent of her. And it said, you don't have to do that. Instead, try the Axe Morning After Pillow. And then it introduces an inflatable chest of a man with his arm. You blow it up, you switch yourself with that pillow so that she can snuggle up to the pillow, and you can finally go and play video games or play sports or do whatever it is that you want to do. Okay, there's so many things that are going wrong with that message that Axe is giving you. But I think the big one that I want to look at now and think about is what Axe is telling you, what the world is telling you, is that independence makes you a man. Taking whatever you want from girls, whether you're taking it from a girl in a one-on-one setting, whether you're taking something from a girl that that maybe you see on the internet or that someone shows a picture of you to, being a man is taking what you can get and then having no responsibility with that person, doing whatever you want. And that makes you a man. And that's what this son is believing. He goes up to his dad and he says, Dad, I want the money that's coming to me. When does somebody get an inheritance? Boom, thank you. You get an inheritance when somebody that you love who's usually older than you, they die, and then you get their money. So the son is coming up to his father and he's saying, Dad, I want your stuff, but I don't want you. You're as good as dead to me, but I want your money. He doesn't care. That's right. He doesn't care about his father. but he cares about his father's stuff. Now, it's easy to hear that and be like, whoa, that is a bad son. Oh my gosh, I would never, ever do that. But think about this for a second. Think about yourself. How often do we actually want the jawbreakers, the things that the world holds out to offer, the good-looking things? How often do we want those things if we don't really want God? We want God's blessings. We want maybe even a blessing as good as like friendship. Like, God, I want friends. I know that you made relationships, you made friendships a possibility when you created the world. I want friendships, but I don't want you. I don't want you to get in the way of my relationships. I don't want you to get in the way of my friendships. If my friends are showing me something or my friends are laughing at something, then I want them more than I want you. So could you just like get out of my way? You're as good as dead because I want this more. Or God, you know what? Video games are actually a great thing. I don't have a problem with video games. I actually love to play video games. But how often do we, instead of just enjoying that God, made like He made all the elements and things that we finally figured out to put together that would make video games, and He made us with creative minds to think about like making a storyline and making like a really cool like football games or whatever. Like He made us with the capability to do that, but we're prone to loving those things and wanting those things more than we want Him. You know what? Like, God, I actually just want to play this and forget about how hard life is and scary things are. And I don't want to deal with my faith. I'm just going to like escape into a video game right now. So I don't want you. I want the things that you've made. Or I want pleasure. My goodness. I want to feel good, but I don't want you. And so I don't want all the laws and restrictions that you've put on things that make me feel good. I just want to feel good for myself, and I'm going to do that. So I want the blessing that you have made. Like God, newsflash, God made pleasure. Do you realize that? He invented that? Like, it's a good thing for our bodies to feel good. For us to bite into something and to taste good, God made that possible. Or for our bodies to feel good when something, like God made that possible. But He made that possible in certain relationships and confines for our protection because He loves us. But we are prone to saying, you know what, God, I don't want that. I don't want you with that. I want that for myself. I want you. I want your things more than I want you. So I would encourage you, would you look in the spiritual mirror for me for just a little bit and be honest with yourself and think about what is it that you really want? What is it that you really think is going to make you a man? Do you think like getting pleasure or getting success or getting these things are going to make you a man, or going to make you cool to your friends, or going to make you feel like you are justified, that you are worthy, that you are respectable? Is that what you think is going to make you a man or not? So the young son, he takes his father's belongings and he moves away. Listen to Luke 15. I'm going to read verse 13 through 16 now. Not many days later, the young son gathered all he had and took a journey into a far country, and there he squandered his property in reckless living. And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his fields to feed pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything. So we have this young son. He's all of a sudden has all this independence in his pocket, right? He's got all this money in his pocket, all these things that he can do in the world in his pocket. And what's he do? He goes out and he spends it. That's right. He goes out and he spends it on reckless living, on getting whatever it is that he wants, whatever it is that he thinks is going to make him happy. We're calling those, what are we calling those today? They are jawbreakers, right? They're things that look satisfying, that look delicious, but in the end they leave us empty and unsatisfied. And this is what I would tell you. Y'all know, like, sometimes, like, you might get, like, if you get, like, a warranty on your phone, and then your phone, like, maybe you get like water on your phone, you take it to the store and you're like, hey, like, I put my phone in the washing machine and I need a new phone now. And they're like, oh, did you read the small print? Because the warranty doesn't cover that. You know what I'm talking about? You know what the small print is? Like that big thing that no one ever reads. Like when you buy something on iTunes, you just say, yeah, I agree, whatever. I agree with the small print. That's really what happens with this guy, is that there is small print to the things that people hold out to you and say, you know what, this is going to make you feel so good. This is going to make you feel like a man. This is going to make you satisfied. But nobody ever tells you about the small print of the far country, the world. That's what the far country represents here in this story. That this guy goes into the far country and he spins and spins and he has pleasure and he's happy and he gets all these things, but then he finds himself and he's paying for the small print. No one ever tells you about the small print of the far country. Career or athletic success. Career success, being really athletic, that's something that we can strive for, that we think like, man, if only I could be an NFL football player, if only I could be a basketball player, if only I could get that, then I would be really happy. But then I would be really satisfied. But no one ever tells you, you know what? It's lonely at the top. It doesn't satisfy. Listen to this quote. This is an unbelievable quote from Tom Brady in a 60 Minutes interview. Don't know who Tom Brady is. Tom Brady is the starting quarterback for the New England Patriots. I think he's won 4 Super Bowls, 3, 4, something like that. He's married to a supermodel. He has a $100 million contract. Most people would say, Tom Brady's got some good things going on for him. You know, like if you could live the dream, he's gotten a lot of jawbreakers thrown his way. I bet he's loving life. I bet he's so satisfied. Listen to this interview. Please listen. This is unbelievable, and it's so true. Tom Brady speaking. He's talking to a guy named Steve Croft who's interviewing him. Tom Brady says, I guess he won 3 Super Bowls. Why do I have 3 Super Bowl rings and still think there's something greater out there for me? I mean, maybe a lot of people would say, hey man, this is what it is. I reached my goal, my dream, my life. Me, I think, God, it's got to be more than this. I mean, this isn't it. This can't be what it's all cracked up to be. And then Steve Croft asks him, what's the answer? And Tom Brady says, I wish I knew. I wish I knew. You hear that? This guy who has gotten everything that the world would say, that makes you a man. You're on commercials, you're famous, you're married to a beautiful woman, you've got all this money, you're a champion. And he's looking at his life, and he's saying, this is it? This is everything? Like, there's got to be more than this. And I don't know what it is. I'm not satisfied. The world will hold out things to you guys and say, this is what's going to make you happy. But listen to a man who has actually gotten all those things. And he's saying, you know what? I'm not happy. This isn't it. This can't be it, right? The world will lie to you and tell you that success, career success, makes you happy. Can I borrow your watch? I want to make sure I'm not going over. The world will also hold out to you, possessions and say this will make you happy. We already talked about video games. I said I like video games. Video games are fine. But no one tells you about the small print of video games. When we can give our lives over to video games and become completely lost in that world. And the world would say, you know what, that's cool. That's fine, like do that. Listen, I read that this is from a video game blog called Ranked. And y'all know that blog, Ranked? All right. Anyway, they did a top 10 list of people who have died while playing video games. Like top 10 guys who went out the right way playing video games. And these guys were the first ever. The earliest known deaths to have occurred while playing video games are attributed to Jeff Daly and Peter Burkowski, who both expired while achieving fantastically high scores on the popular arcade title Berserk by Atari. If you've ever seen Berserk, It is like the lamest video game you can imagine. It's a stick figure going, and then there's like bad guys who come in, and the stick figure goes, and there's like little lines just go across. I mean, it's the most basic game you can imagine. In 1981, Daly popped a quarter into the robot killing machine to score an alleged 16,660 points, his personal best. Moments later, he collapsed and was pronounced dead of a heart attack at the tender age of 19. Burkowski died under similar circumstances less than a year later when frequenting his local game room, Friar Tuck's, in Kalamazoo City, Illinois, for months. He finally pushed himself too far. Shortly after entering his initials on the Berserk scoreboard for not one but two record high scores, he also fell victim to cardiac arrest. Both of these men, listen, this is the world speaking now. Both of these men died in a blaze of glory. And with their literal last ounce of life, they entered scores into machines, dying legends forever, and being known as the guys who died not only doing what they love, but perfecting it. I'm going to make fun of some of the poor examples of humanity on this list, but these guys started it all. They set the example, and they died right after entering their names into a top score list, and that is hardcore. It's easy to point your finger and say, what a stupid thing, like, that's so dumb. But guys, we are prone to giving our lives over to things because we think they're going to make us happy. And the world would say, yeah, high five, it will make you happy. Do it, man, blaze of glory, put your high score in there at the very end. It's so cool, it's awesome. But I'm telling you, that's not a satisfying life to live. It's not a satisfying life to live. So what is? We've got the younger brother, and he's looking around, he's looking at himself, and he's thinking, where does he find himself? He's done all this stuff. You remember in the story? He's done all this stuff. He's poor now. He doesn't have any money. And so what is he doing? He's feeding pigs. Okay, who is Jesus telling the story to? People in what country? Israel. People in Israel. Y'all notice, like, how much pig we've been eating in there? Huh? Why? Because pigs are unclean. The younger brother finds himself, Jesus is like, he's like really hammering this home. He's not just at like a low point, he's at the lowest of lows. He's feeding the very animal that is the unclean animal, or is one of the unclean animals. And he's wishing that he could have their food. He's wishing that he could eat what they're eating. He is desperate. He's totally unsatisfied. He's gone and spent his life it says later he spent a lot of his fortune on prostitution. He spent a lot of his fortune on getting stuff, on whatever it is, on trying to fill this void inside of him that he thinks will satisfy himself, and he's miserable. And so he kind of gives himself a pep talk. Listen to Luke 15, 17 through 19. But when he came to himself, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and before you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants." So he's like, okay, I got a plan. I'm going to go to my dad. I'm going to tell him, Dad, I messed up. Will you treat, just like, I know that like I spent a lot of your money, but I am starving here. I don't have anything. Will you just like have me back as one of, I'll be a servant, okay? I don't have to be a son anymore. I'll just be a servant. Will you have me back? He decides to go home. He's going to pay off his debt, Like, I'm going to be a servant so I can work back and get in your good graces. I'm going to pay this off. And actually, this is the first time that the son does something truly manly. He admits that he's dependent. The world is telling you, remember I said the world's telling you that independence makes you a man. Getting whatever it is that you can get by whatever strength you have, or by whatever family you're born into, or by how much money you have, just getting whatever it is, however funny you can be, or however cool you can be, getting whatever it is that you can get on your own, and being independent, not needing anyone, That makes you a man. And for the first time, the son realizes, I need someone. And what I would tell you is that Jesus is telling us that what makes you a godly person, what makes you a man, is realizing your dependence. The son realizes his dependence. And listen to what happens next. And what happens next is one of my favorite images in the Bible. Listen to this. You've got this, I want you to imagine an old man. He's got this long robe, and he's sitting on his porch. He's thinking about his boy, and he's wondering where in the world. No, they didn't have cell phones back then. He hadn't been emailing him, hadn't heard from him. Where's my son? Hear this with fresh ears this morning. You've heard this story before. Listen to this. And he arose and came to his father, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and before you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servant, bring quickly the best robe, put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet, and bring the fattened calf and kill it. And let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and it's found. And they began to celebrate. It's party time. The son's got like his planned speech. He's like, okay, you can like imagine him like walking to the house. He's like thinking about his son. Father, I've sinned against heaven and before you. Would you have me back as your son? And the dad sees his son, and he gets out and it says he runs to him. Which old men in the Bible times with like the big tunics and stuff, they didn't run to go meet someone. He pulls up his robe kind of, so he can get his legs really stretched out, and he runs. And it's like the form tackle hug. Like his son's like trying to give him the speech. And he's like, no. Go get the big, fattest, fatty, delicious beef that you can find. We're having a barbecue. Get the best robe, put it on, put sandals on his feet. It's party time. And what I want you to see is that the example of true manliness that we see, the true man in this story is the father. The father has taken his dignity, his honor, his strength, his money, and he's given it all to someone else. He's given it for someone else. He hasn't used his strength and his honor and all the things that he has going on in the world to get stuff for himself. He's using it to serve his son, to love his son. Oh, man. Okay, I'm going to close with this story. Can y'all turn your imagination flip on for a second? Imagination switches on. Okay. I want you to imagine something. It's hard to imagine, but I think you can do it. Imagine for me, if you will, that you have committed a crime so bad that you are on death row. Okay? So just imagine for a second what that would be like. To be in a scary prison by yourself, without your parents around. You're in a jumpsuit. There's a lot of scary dudes around you. You're in like confined. What is it called? Like solitary confinement. You're in solitary confinement. You're in the jumpsuit. You've got the shackles on your wrists and your ankles. And you're by yourself and you're just basically waiting to die. And then the prison guard comes by. He knocks on your bars. He says, you got a visitor. And you're thinking, who in the world would visit me? And you kind of shuffle in to the visitation room. You sit down. And you look through the glass. And there's an old man sitting there. And the old man has a little boy next to him. And the old man's holding the phone. And you pick up the phone. And the old man, this is the first thing he says to you when you pick up the phone. He goes, you're free. And you're like, all right, buddy, thanks for coming about. And you start to hang up the phone. He's like, no, wait. You're free. And you're like, what are you talking about, man? You're wasting my time. He's like, listen, I am the ruler, the governor, the land where you committed this crime. And I'm the only person in this land who can make you free, who can pardon you, and you're pardoned. You're free. You're coming with me. Can you imagine how you would feel for a second? You just went from dying to like, the electric chair, however, guillotine, whatever. You just went from about to die, and now you're free. And he says, and that's not, you're going to actually come, you're going to live with me in my home. And you're going to be treated like royalty. And so you get in the, and all of a sudden the prisoners are like, the prison guards are taking off your shackles. They bring in like fresh, new, beautiful clothes. You take off the orange jumpsuit. You're putting on your new clothes. And you're like, I can't, and you haven't felt like what it's like to have your hands free for forever. And you're walking out, and the doors are opening for the prison, and the gate's coming up. And you're like, this is actually happening. And the limousine pulls up, and you and the old man, and you go and you sit down in the limousine. And then you turn and you look back to get one last look of the prison where you've been in, and you see something that makes your heart stop. And what you see is that little boy that had come in with that man. And the prison guards are taking that orange jumpsuit that you've been wearing, and they're putting it on that little boy. And they take the shackles that were on your wrists, they put them on his. And they put him on his ankles too. And they push him in the back, and you're like, let's get going. And you freak out. You're like, whoa, wait! Is that your son? Like, they're taking him back in. And the king turns to you and he says, that was the deal. That was the deal. In order for you to come and live with me, I gave them my son. I gave him for you. That is a pale comparison to what's happened to us. That is a pale comparison to what the Lord has done for you and me. Do you know that? Do you know that He severed a relationship with His Son and sent Him to die for you? And do you know that's the only thing that's going to make you satisfied? Trying to strive and get something that's going to make you feel really manly or really accomplished or really good, that's not going to satisfy. What's going to satisfy you is not looking at that red door. No, I'm just kidding. What's going to satisfy you is knowing Christ. And what's going to make you a man, listen, this is my last point, last thing I want to say. What's going to make you a man is, listen to me guys, eyes right here. What's going to make you a man is knowing and seeing that you're dependent on Him. Is knowing that you are dependent on Him and resting in Him and His love. All right, let's pray. Lord, thank you so much for a chance to open up your word and to hear what you have to say to us. I pray that you would help us to know it and to believe it. I pray that you would help us to see the jawbreakers in our lives, the things that we're trying to get that will satisfy us. I pray that you would help us to see how much we need you. And I pray that you would help us to rest in that you love us, that you've come running for us, and that you were a man for us, that you loved us. I pray you would help us to know and believe that. And we ask and pray all these things in your name. Amen. All right, thanks for coming, guys. Y'all have a good second elective.